considering she is implying or laying out or insinuating here, and there's really no insinuation.
The sports world was shocked when Complex dropped its list of the most influential female athletes of 2025. At the top, Caitlin Clark. The rising WNBA star had officially cemented herself as the most impactful woman in sports, beating out names like Angel Reese, Aya Wilson, and even Simone Biles, one of the most decorated Olympians of all time. The list immediately set social media on fire. Some fans celebrated Clark's well-earned spot at the top, citing her record-breaking performances, game-changing influence on women's basketball, and massive marketability. But others? They weren't so thrilled. Angel Reese, a player who has been just as outspoken, dominant, and culturally relevant, was ranked lower, and her fans were not happy about it. And she wasn't alone. Aya Wilson, a proven WNBA superstar, also seemed to question how these rankings were decided. But perhaps the biggest shock of all? Simone Biles, an athlete who has literally changed the sport of gymnastics, wasn't even in the top 2. This wasn't just about who's the best on the court anymore. This list made one thing clear. The definition of influence in sports is changing fast. Is this shift a good thing, or are some of the greatest athletes being overlooked? And did Caitlin Clark truly deserve the #1 spot, or is the media playing favorites? The reactions to this ranking have divided the sports world, and what happens next could change how we measure greatness in women's sports forever. The moment Complex released its list of the most influential female athletes of 2025, the sports world erupted. Some expected Caitlin Clark to be high on the list, but when she took the #1 spot, surpassing even Simone Biles and Angel Reese, the conversation quickly turned into a full-blown controversy. Social media was on fire, fans were debating every ranking, and even some athletes weren't afraid to share their thoughts. Caitlin Clark had already proven she was more than just another basketball player. She had become a marketing powerhouse with endorsements, record-breaking viewership numbers, and a following that extended far beyond women's basketball. Her impact was undeniable. But did that mean she truly deserved to be ranked the most influential female athlete in the world? And if so, what did that say about the other legendary women who found themselves ranked below her? Angel Reese had built her own empire in women's basketball, balancing a fierce on-court presence with a massive personal brand. She wasn't just known for her skills but also for her confidence, personality, and willingness to speak her mind. She had helped shape the new era of women's basketball, becoming one of the most recognizable faces in the WNBA. But when she found herself ranked below Clark, the reaction from her supporters was immediate. Some called it disrespectful, while others claimed it was just another example of how the media tends to favor certain athletes over others. Aya Wilson, a dominant WNBA star and MVP, also raised eyebrows at the list. If influence was about impact, leadership, and success, how could some of the league's most accomplished players find themselves outside the top spot? And then there was Simone Biles, a woman who had not only redefined gymnastics but had also become a global advocate for mental health. She had inspired millions, broken records, and changed the conversation about athlete well-being forever. Yet, despite everything she had done for the world of sports, she was placed behind Caitlin Clark. That ranking alone sent shockwaves through the sports world. Fans of Biles saw it as a complete insult, arguing that winning gold medals on the world's biggest stage should hold more weight than any level of influence within the WNBA. But that was the real debate at the heart of all this. How do we define influence? Was it about championships, cultural impact, social media following? Caitlin Clark had an advantage that very few female athletes had ever seen before. She wasn't just great at basketball, she was a superstar with a brand that transcended sports. Her games had brought in millions of viewers, she had landed major sponsorship deals, and even before she had played her first professional WNBA game, she was already being talked about as the future of the sport. She had single-handedly drawn in new fans and had changed the way people viewed women's basketball. But was that more influential than years of dominance at the highest level of competition? That's where the controversy truly began. Critics of the ranking pointed out that Clark hadn't won a professional championship yet, while athletes like Wilson, Reese, and Biles had already proven themselves on the biggest stages. If influence was about on-court success, then Biles should have been ranked higher. If it was about WNBA impact, then Wilson should have been ahead of Clark. And if it was about cultural and social media presence, then Angel Reese certainly had a case to be above her. Some pointed to the fact that Clark's success came with a level of media favoritism that other athletes didn't receive. The WNBA had seen other great players before her, but none had been marketed as aggressively. Was it because she was the best, or was it because the media had chosen her as the face of the next era of women's basketball? Reese's supporters argued that the rankings reflected a deeper issue in women's sports, one where certain players were given more visibility and opportunities than others. They pointed to past instances where Angel Reese's moments had been overshadowed, despite her being one of the most recognizable names in the game. Some even argued that the way these rankings were created was flawed, as they didn't take into account the different ways athletes impact their sports and the world around them. Aya Wilson's reaction also played a big role in the growing backlash. She had been a dominant force in the WNBA, proving herself season after season, yet she wasn't ranked anywhere near the top. The debate wasn't just about Clark anymore. It was about how women's basketball players were valued overall. Was success in the league being recognized, or was marketability and hype the only thing that mattered? On the other side of the argument, there are those who believe that influence in sports is about more than just what happens during a game. It's about who can bring in the biggest audiences, attract the most lucrative sponsorships, and redefine the way people view a sport. By that standard, Caitlin Clark's ranking at number 1 makes perfect sense. She has completely changed the perception of women's basketball, bringing in record-breaking TV ratings, selling out arenas, and landing sponsorship deals that rival some of the biggest names in the NBA. If influence is about who has the power to shape the future, then Clark's position at the top of the list isn't just justified, it's inevitable. But where does that leave Angel Reese and Aya Wilson? Reese has become one of the most polarizing and talked about athletes in basketball, using her personality and confidence to build a brand that extends far beyond the court. She has proven that she isn't afraid to speak her mind, challenge the status quo, and demand more visibility for women's sports. Her presence alone has fueled countless viral moments, yet she was still placed below Clark, a decision that has only added to the ongoing debate about whether she gets the respect she deserves. Aya Wilson, on the other hand, has taken a more traditional route to influence. She has dominated the WNBA, winning MVPs, leading her team to championships, and consistently proving that she is one of the best to ever play the game. Yet, despite her undeniable success, she wasn't even close to the top spot. Some argue that this reflects a larger issue in women's sports, where established stars are often overlooked in favor of younger, more marketable names. If Wilson can dominate the league year after year and still not be recognized as the most influential, what does that say about how WNBA players are valued? The controversy over these rankings highlights an even bigger conversation. What does it truly mean to be influential? If it's about who dominates headlines, then Caitlin Clark is the clear winner. If it's about who wins the most and proves themselves in their sport, then Simone Biles should have been ranked first. And if it's about who changes the conversation and forces the sports world to pay attention, then Angel Reese should be leading the pack. There's no denying that Clark, Reese, and Wilson have all played a massive role in the rise of women's basketball. The WNBA is seeing more attention than ever before, with higher viewership, bigger endorsements, and increased fan engagement. But the rankings raise an important concern. Is the league being built around one player at the expense of others? Some believe that the media is setting Caitlin Clark up as the face of women's basketball, while players like Reese and Wilson, who have also had a massive impact, aren't getting the same level of recognition. For Reese, this isn't just about one list, it's about a pattern she has seen before. Despite her massive following, her viral moments, and her ability to command attention, she has often felt like she's fighting for the same respect that others receive more easily. The debate over this ranking has only reinforced that feeling, with her supporters questioning whether she is being unfairly pushed to the side in favor of Clark. Meanwhile, Wilson's situation brings up another issue. Do WNBA championships and MVPs even matter when it comes to influence? If an athlete who has won at the highest level still isn't considered as impactful as a player who hasn't played a professional game yet, then what message does that send to future players? The backlash to Wilson's ranking isn't just about her. It's about how women's basketball players are valued in general. If success in the league doesn't translate to influence, then how will that affect the way future stars approach their careers? Simone Biles' ranking adds another layer to this debate. If an athlete who has achieved everything in her sport still isn't at the top of the list, then does that mean gymnastics is being overlooked compared to basketball? Some fans believe that this ranking wasn't just unfair to Biles. It was a reflection of how certain sports are prioritized over others. Gymnastics is a sport that has produced some of the most dominant athletes in history, yet Biles was ranked lower than WNBA players who haven't reached the same level of global dominance. Ultimately, this controversy isn't just about who is ranked where. It's about what these rankings say about the future of sports. Are we moving into an era where influence is dictated by social media marketing and visibility, rather than actual performance? Or is this simply a reflection of how sports evolve, where athletes who can bring in the most money and attention naturally rise to the top? For now, the debate remains open. Some will argue that Caitlin Clark's ranking is deserved, that she is the future of women's basketball, and that her influence is already shaping the next generation of players. Others will insist that Angel Reese and Aya Wilson should have been ranked higher, that their contributions to the WNBA deserve more recognition, and that Clark's success is a result of media bias rather than pure influence. And then there are those who believe that Simone Biles being ranked behind them all is the biggest mistake of all. If a multiple-time Olympic champion, someone who has changed the way gymnastics is viewed and performed, isn't considered the most influential, then what does that say about how we recognize true greatness? One thing is certain: this discussion isn't ending anytime soon. The rankings may have sparked the controversy, but the larger conversation about influence, media favoritism, and how we measure success in women's sports is just beginning. As the WNBA continues to grow, as more athletes build their brands beyond their sport, and as fans demand more transparency in how influence is measured, this debate will only become more intense. So where do you stand? Did Complex get it right, or did they completely miss the mark? Should Caitlin Clark be the face of women's sports? Or are Angel Reese, Aya Wilson, and Simone Biles being unfairly overlooked? The only thing we know for sure is that this conversation is far from over.